Let's find the best camera for video podcasts. If you're looking for that pro video look on your podcast, upgrading to a mirrorless camera goes a long way, but choosing the right one can be difficult. So in this video, I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison and review 5 different cameras, several from Sony, the Lumix S5 II, and the Canon EOS R50. The key differences when it comes to ports and actually using it with your computer, how they perform with autofocus, which ones are the easiest to connect and record with Riverside, and at the end of this video, which is the best camera for your budget. Now, as I review each camera, I'm going to cover 5 key aspects, whether it's a crop sensor or full frame and why it matters, what ports like HDMI and USB, how's the focus, which is important when you're recording a podcast and you can't see what the camera's recording the whole time, how it functions as a webcam directly with your computer, and what kind of lens you should pair with these cameras for a video podcast. And there is one of these cameras that had a major disappointment. First up is the Sony ZV-E10. It's under $1,000. Oftentimes you can find it for around $700. You can get it used for even less. And while you can get it both with a kit lens or a lens that comes with the camera, I would also recommend some aftermarket lenses, and we'll get into that later. But the Sony ZV-E10 is still a solid choice. Here on the left side, it has USB-C. This can be used to both charge the camera and connect it to your computer to be used as a webcam. Now, it does have a mini HDMI port, so technically you could connect this to a video switcher like the Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro or Rodecaster Video. But if you plan to use these kinds of cameras with a switcher, I would recommend getting models with a full-size HDMI port, and we'll talk about these in a second. Now, if you're going to be using these cameras in webcam mode, you don't need to have an SD card or record locally to the camera. That's what you use Riverside for. But if you ever did want to record outside the studio or something that's not a podcast, this does record at 4K 30, and you can do slow-mo in 1080p. When you're wanting to use the ZV-E10 as a webcam, you do need to go into the menu first, select USB streaming from that second camera menu there, and then connect your cable. The camera's now ready to be used as a webcam, and I'm going to put it on my tripod. With all of these cameras, you'll also need to download the webcam utility if you want to connect it directly to your computer with a single cable. I'll put links to Sony's Imaging Edge webcam utility, Canon has its own webcam utility, and we're going to get to this Panasonic one soon. Now here in Riverside, I'm going to jump into a studio to record by clicking the record button, and then with your camera connected and the webcam utility installed, you'll see the camera show up here as an option. I'll click the ZV-E10, then you would choose your microphone and speaker output, and you're ready to join the studio. Now, as you can see, with the right lens, this camera can look really good. I have an f1.4 setting right now with the Sigma lens that I have, and it's a very wide angle lens. So I'm getting about the same framing as I did with the main camera from the beginning of the video. I also find Sony cameras like this one to be the best at autofocus. If I were to place my hand in front of my eyes, it will focus on my hand, and this would be like a product as well. Then as soon as I remove my hand, it's going to focus back on my eyes. The autofocus is incredible and I trust it. That's why I use a Sony camera for all my videos. That would also be helpful if you wanted to hold up a product and talk about it on your podcast. It will focus on that. And then when you take it away from your eyes, it'll focus back on your face. This Sigma lens f1.4 combo with the ZV-E10 just gives you a great look. And I'm going to start a quick Riverside recording, and the only caveat is in webcam mode, the Sony ZV-E10 maxes out at 720p, so you won't be able to get full 1080p HD video from this camera as a webcam. If you wanted to use that mini HDMI to a video switcher, then you can get higher resolution output, but we're trying to optimize for simplicity and just connecting your camera to your computer. So if you're okay with the 720p and you like how this looks, the Sony ZV-E10 is a great option. And keep in mind, if you have multiple people on the podcast and you're going to be showing them as a grid most of the time, having 720 versus 1080p isn't going to make a ton of difference. Having a great lens with natural blurred background like you have here because of a low f-stop, that's going to go a long way in having great video quality, even over 1080 versus 720p. So again, the ZV-E10 is about $750. It's actually on sale as I record this video, but you can get a great deal on this, especially if you get one used, maybe Facebook Marketplace. But the real investment comes in if you want that natural blurred background look. This is the lens I'm using right here. It's the Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens. And just to give you an idea, I put on the kit lens that you can get with the ZV-E10, but as you can see, it crops in much further because the lens doesn't have as wide of an angle, and you don't get that nice blurred background as much as you did before because this lens only goes to an f3.5. Next up, let's check out the Canon EOS R50. This one's in a similar price range, $830, including a kit lens that's pretty wide at 18 millimeters. This is also an APS-C or crop sensor camera, so you're gonna need a wide angle lens if you have a smaller room like mine, or you just wanna be a good distance from the camera. On the right-hand side, you'll see that USB-C port, which is used for charging and in webcam mode, plus that mini HDMI port here as well if you wanted to use it with a video switcher. I'll also mention that all of these cameras have this fully articulating touchscreen, which is nice and convenient, so when it's pointed at you, you can still preview it right here. Now with my camera connected with that USB-C cable, then you'll actually see the Canon camera show up here in the list. I've chosen that, and now here's my camera in Riverside, and let's jump into record. Now a couple things you'll notice, the background is not as blurred as on the other lenses. That's because this kit lens, it only goes to f4.5, which is a more closed aperture than f3.5 or definitely 1.4, which I used on my personal camera. And I'm also using all the default color profiles. I'm going for simplicity. On a lot of these cameras, you can go crazy with like log footage and having LUTs on the camera. Not gonna go into all that because again, video podcast, you usually just wanna plug and play, start recording. So this is what it looks like. Autofocus is pretty good. It is tracking my eye again. If I hold up my hand, you'll see it actually focuses on that. When I remove my hand, it'll focus back on my eyes. Focusing is a little slower than the Sony. You can adjust that focus sensitivity in the camera settings, but right out of the box, it just is a little slower to focus on whatever I put in front of the lens, and then when I take it away, coming back to my eyes. Still does well staying locked in when it's just my face on camera. I do find in this webcam mode, sometimes the frame rate can suffer a little bit, like it's struggling to stream that video to your computer, but overall, I think it looks pretty good. If you upgrade the lens on this EOS R50, you're gonna get a much better look. You can get a wider angle lens, one with a lower f-stop, get that blurred background, and this could look really good. The major benefit of this Canon over the Sony ZV-E10 I showed before is you will get that 1080p HD quality in webcam mode. So just connected with a USB-C cable, camera to your computer, you'll get 1080p right out of the box. I'll start a recording here in Riverside, and this is what an actual Riverside recording looks like with the Canon EOS R50. I'm still using my shotgun microphone with my Rodecaster Pro 2, but again, upgrade this lens and this camera could go a long way in your video podcast. And remember, you might want to use 2 or 3 cameras depending on your setup. So a camera like this with a long lens, like a 80mm or even higher, will give you those nice in-person shots off to the side. And I find this webcam mode to be really convenient, so you don't have to worry about capture cards or video switchers. Once again, the Canon EOS R50, about $800. And if you wanted to upgrade that lens, this one with an f1.8, again, a much lower f-stop number, that will give you the natural blurred background. But this is a 50mm, so it's actually going to be a pretty far zoom because of that crop sensor. Something like this 16mm f2.8, that's probably a good pairing with this camera, or the 35mm f1.8, also pretty good. All right, these next cameras are going up in price, but that's because they are full frame cameras, which mean they just capture a larger image, higher quality, but also will naturally give you a wider shot. You'll notice my framing right here. I'm actually using a 35mm lens with a Sony A7 IV. That's a full frame camera. If I were to have a 35mm lens on a crop sensor or APS-C camera, it would look more like this, cropped in. So depending on your space and environment, that more zoomed in nature of the image, maybe that would actually benefit your podcast camera shots. But to make it simple, if you're going with an APS-C or crop sensor camera, like the 2 cameras I just showed you, you probably want to go with a wider angle lens, like less than 35mm, maybe even that 16mm range. If you have a full frame camera, like the ones I'm about to show you, you can go with a 35mm lens or higher. Next up, let's talk about the Panasonic Lumix S5 II. This is $2,000, but it does come with a lens, and it's an f1.8 lens, which is pretty good. The very first mirrorless camera I ever got was actually a Lumix S5, the first version. I loved that camera, although I found the autofocus to be a little slow. So we're gonna test that in a second. But this does have a full-size HDMI port if you want to connect it to a video switcher or just an external display. And it has the USB-C port here for charging and supposedly webcam mode. And I say supposedly because this was the camera that disappointed me most. Panasonic has a page on their website where you can download the supposed Lumix webcam software. But after installing this and trying for a couple hours, this S5 II just doesn't work in webcam mode. I couldn't get my Mac to recognize it in multiple applications, and on Reddit, several users said that webcam mode is just broken on the Lumix. So unfortunately, you can't use the Lumix with a single cable to your computer. You'll have to use a video capture device and that HDMI port or a video switcher. but we can still test that out. I'm gonna use this HDMI cable, connect it directly to the camera, and that's going to my Blackmagic A10 Pro switcher. Now that I have it connected to my A10 mini switcher, I've chosen that here, put the camera in the program feed, and let's jump into the studio. Now when it comes to image quality on the Lumix, I like how it looks, but it has an issue, which you're probably seeing right now. It is struggling to focus on my eye. If I hold something in front of my eyes and center of the frame, it'll focus on it eventually, but that focus, especially on the eye tracking, is just not there. Sometimes it will lose focus even though nothing changed in the frame and I'm just looking at the lens. And if you're wanting to hold up objects like this for a product style showcase, maybe in your podcast, it takes a long time for it to recognize that, hey, I should refocus, and it takes a long time to get there. When I take it away from my eyes, it gets there sometimes, but the focus is nowhere near as good as even the Canon or definitely the Sony cameras. So while I like the picture quality, not able to use it as a webcam, so you'll need a video switcher or capture device, and that focus just not being on par with the Sony and Canon, like you can see right now as I'm talking, I actually would not recommend the S5 II. Unless you're gonna be running manual focus for your podcast, which I would not recommend, and if you're doing it by yourself, I don't think it's a good option. I just can't recommend this one. It's a shame because it looks really good, but if you're blurry, it doesn't matter. All right, this next one, this is the Sony A7C II. This is one of the most expensive cameras I'm gonna be talking about, coming in at $2,200 just for the body. You'll need to actually buy a lens separately. Looking at the camera itself, I kind of like this two-tone style. That's just my preference. But it has the USB-C port here for webcam and charging. It does have the mini HDMI port, so not a full-size HDMI. But the good news, this works great as a webcam, and it's one of the few mirrorless cameras that will give you 4K video directly from the camera to your computer in that webcam mode. Like I showed you before, the Canon gives you 1080p, the Sony ZV-E10 is 720p. This one is 4K as a webcam. Just for reference, if you go into the menu of the A7C II, you'll see the streaming option here in the menu and then USB streaming. And here you can choose what resolution to stream out to your computer all the way up to 4K 30. If you find your computer struggles processing that high resolution and frame rate, you can go down to 1080p at 30 frames per second. But it's just awesome that this camera gives you these options for webcam mode specifically. And one other note, if you want to use this in 4K mode, I would actually use a Thunderbolt cable with your computer. Yes, it really is just USB-C 3.1 speeds, but it will give you a warning if the USB-C cable you're using is not fast enough to transmit that data. So just to be safe, I go straight Thunderbolt. All right, I'm back in Riverside going into record. Then here in the Riverside studio, I can choose here. And that is actually the Sony A7C II. And as you can see right here, it's giving me 4K video here in Riverside over that webcam utility, which is awesome. So here it is, the Sony A7C II in 4K video quality, recording in Riverside, and it has that great Sony autofocus. So if I hold my hand up to the camera, quickly focuses there, then quickly focuses back on my eye. Super fast. I think it's faster than the Sony ZV-E10 and might even be faster than my own A7 IV. If I were to hold up an object to the camera, that autofocus, super fast, super sharp. And when I take it away, right back on my face, locked in on my eye tracking autofocus. Now this lens is an f3.5, so you could actually get a nicer lens for an even more blurred background. Again, a Sigma 35mm f1.4 or f1.2, but this honestly looks great. And you're getting 4K video with just that single cable to your computer. No video switcher or capture device required. Let's hit record. And if you are looking for the highest quality video, up to 4K, from a mirrorless camera in webcam mode, just one cable to your computer, the Sony A7C II, I think is it. This looks incredible. It's recording great in Riverside. The autofocus is amazing. You still have that interchangeable lens if you need a longer focus or a lower f-stop. I think this is the best option you can get, especially for video podcasts, that setup simplicity and that pro video look. Again, it's $2,200 for the camera alone. There are some lenses that you can pair with it. This is on B&H, and I'll put links to all of these in the video description. A 24mm f2.8 would be great. Or if you want to use the lens that I have on my Sony A7 IV, this is the one I use. It's a Sigma 35mm f1.4, meaning you can crank that f-stop way down and get that really nice blurred background. And for our fifth camera comparison, my camera. I use the Sony A7 IV. It's actually about the same price because it's a few years old, so it's come down. It does have 33 megapixel photos, which is one of the reasons I got it. I wanted video and photo capabilities. It does have the USB-C port and a full-size HDMI port, which I use with my Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro. So if you like the look of the video right now, this is what you can get. Now, if you get the Sony A7C II and pair it with my lens, your video will pretty much look exactly like mine. The main difference from what you just saw and my personal camera is the lens. And when I go into Riverside to record, I choose my video switcher, the Blackmagic design. I have my audio interface. Now, the one major downside to the A7 IV as opposed to the A7C II is if you use it in webcam mode, meaning just a USB-C cable to your computer, you're gonna get a maximum 1080p resolution. You can't get that full 4K resolution that you get with the A7C II. Now, autofocus on the A7 IV is still excellent. I can cover my hands, focuses on that, goes right back to my face. I can hold up an object or product, it focuses on that. I remove it, focuses back on my face. I will say the A7C II might be a little faster and a little smoother on that autofocus, but for my podcasting needs, the A7 IV has been great. I record all my YouTube videos with it. But if you want to see what my camera and lens look like in a video podcast setup, I post a video podcast every week. My show is Primary Technology. It's recorded with my A7 IV right here in Riverside through my Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro. So how would I rank these? On a budget level, the Sony ZV-E10 is really good. If you want 1080p webcam utility, I will get the Canon EOS R50. Although I would upgrade from the kit lens to get you a more professional look. And if you have the budget, the best mirrorless camera as a webcam is the Sony A7CII II. I really love this thing, and if I was starting over and I was getting a camera for my podcast and maybe recording some YouTube videos, this would be the one I would get right now. And I really wanted to love the Lumix S5 II, but webcam mode not actually working, you have to use the HDMI out, and that autofocus is just still not there. So can't recommend the Lumix series just yet. Now, if you want to use multiple cameras and learn how to use a video switcher with Riverside for live streaming and recording your podcast, I'll link a video right up here and down in the description. Plus, if you want to know how Riverside can help you expedite your whole editing process, I can get my video podcast edited in less than 20 minutes using AI tools that remove silences, filler words, applies my brand in just a click, and I can even add video and image overlays and B-roll all in the Riverside editor. If you want to see my entire editing process, I walk you through making a podcast episode start to finish. You can watch that video right up here. And subscribe to the Riverside channel and hit that like button. We have lots of gear videos helping you build out either your studio or just get a portable setup. And if you want to upgrade your microphone to match that great mirrorless camera quality, I did a video on the best streaming microphones, XLR, audio interfaces. You can check out that video right up here. We can't wait to see the podcasts and videos you create.